Close your eyes for a second. I want you to think back. Think back to a classroom. Might smell like chalk dust if you're of a certain age, cheap carpet, maybe whiteboard markers, hand sanitizer. Doesn't matter when. Just go back there. Now think about whether in that room there was a grown-up that saw you. Not just your grades, not just your behaviour, or your reputation, your uniform, or your surname, and the connotations that came with all of that. But saw you, the actual you, the one who you were still figuring out. If somebody just came to mind, hold on to that feeling, because today's episode is for them, and it's for you. And if nobody came to mind, this episode might be just the most important one you've heard in a while. Because we're going to talk about what happens when a teacher does show up like that, and the science of why it changes everything. I want to tell you a story about a boy called Jamie. Now, Jamie is a composite, a character built from dozens of real life stories I've come across, from research, from conversations with teachers, from people who've written to me, and also those clients that I've worked with. So if you hear yourself in Jamie, that's because he's made up of all of you, especially some people who have wrote and gone, this is my story, how can you help? So Jamie is 11 years old. He's in year 6, last year of primary school. He is, by every official measure, a problem, an issue, a challenge. He doesn't sit still. He talks when he shouldn't. He's the kid teachers warn other teachers about. Watch out for Jamie in 6B. He's a handful. He doesn't listen, home life complicated, etc., etc. Only that last bit is usually said in hushed voices, as it's a complicated home lives are contagious in some way. His file is long. He's had exclusions, interventions, referral that got lost somewhere in the way between pastoral care and Senko. His mum tries, she tries, but she's working 2 jobs, and by the time she gets home, Jamie's already shut down for the night. The kids in his class have mostly stopped trying to be his friend. It's not that they don't like him, it's that Jamie is unpredictable. One day he's the funniest person in the room, and the next he's flipping a chair and crying in the corridor. Nobody, not even Jamie, seems to know why. And he's been told, not always in words, but in size, in seat placements, in the way a teacher's eyes might slide past him when hands go up, that he's too much, that he's a problem to be managed, not a person to be known. And then in September, he walks into Mrs. Smith's classroom. Mrs. Smith has been teaching for 14 years. She's not new or idealistic. She's experienced and she's intentional, and there's a difference. She's seen burnout, she's seen colleagues leave, she also seen what happens when a kid gets one adult who refuses to write them off. She's seen it when they change the whole trajectory of their life. So she pays attention to the ones other people may have given up on, especially those ones. On the first day, she doesn't make Jamie sit at the front of the class so she can watch him. She doesn't give him a behaviour chart or the modified worksheets before he's even sat down. She just asks him something. What's the one thing you know more about than most people your age? Jamie blinks. Nobody's ever asked him that before. He's a little bit suspicious, but he says quietly, football stats, like historical ones. Not just now, but going back decades. Okay, so we know you've got a good memory and we know you care about history. I can work with that. That's it. That's the moment. Doesn't sound like much, but to Jamie in that instant, he feels something shifted. Not fixed, not yet, but seen. Now, why does this matter? I want to pause Jamie's story just for a moment because I want to give you the why behind what Mrs. Smith's just done, because it isn't accidental. Whether she knew the research or not, as a therapist, that's what I look for. I look for patterns of behaviour and I look how we can support those young people. What she was doing was something that science absolutely backs up. There is a concept in psychology called mattering, the sense that you are significant to others, that you are noticed, that your absence would be felt if you weren't there. And Dr. Gordon Flett at York University has spent decades studying this, and his findings are just striking. Young people who feel like they don't matter, who feel invisible, are significantly more at risk of depression, anxiety, and disengagement from education. And here's the stat I want you to sit with. In a 2021, so okay, 5 years, but in education research, that's new. There was a survey by Education Endowment Foundation, and they found that students from disadvantaged backgrounds who reported having at least one strong, consistent relationship with a teacher were 52% more likely to remain engaged in learning throughout secondary school. 52% from just one relationship, one adult that showed up, like Mrs. Smith. Then there's the work of Robert Planter. So they studied teacher-student relationships and found that those with behavioural difficulties who experience warm, low-conflict relationship with their teacher showed marked improvements, not just behaviourally, but academically. And by the end of the school year, the relationship was the intervention. And this connects beautifully with something many of you will have probably heard of, Stephen Covey's emotional bank account. Now, Covey introduced this idea in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but it's been applied widely in education. The principle is that every relationship has an emotional bank account. Every time you make a deposit, whether it's through kindness, trust, listening, noticing, you build a balance. And when conflict happens, when things go wrong, or when a child acts out or lets you down, you withdraw from that balance. And the key is that you need far more deposits than withdrawals to maintain a healthy relationship. For a kid like Jamie, a kid who is experienced mostly withdrawals from adults in authority, his emotional bank account is overdrawn. He doesn't trust easily because trusting has cost him. Mrs. Smith's question that very first day was a deposit, small, it may be, but an account that had been running on empty for a long time. It mattered enormously. We talk about the emotional bank account when we talk about the family pot. We talk about how, as parents, as kids, we can put in financially, practically, or emotionally into that family pot. And we also make withdrawals. So this is really important because it's not just about schools, but we can use this in our home. I want to take a quick moment here to give you some practical tools, whether you're a teacher, a parent, a youth worker, coach, anyone who works with young people. I want you to really think about how we can make those emotional bank account deposits. So 1, notice specific, not general. Don't say, oh, you're great, or I noticed that you helped that kid find his book and you didn't make a big deal of it. That's the kind of person you are. Specific praise lands differently. It says, I'm watching you and I liked what I see. But instead of just saying thank you, say thank you for helping Johnny today. 2, ask questions that assume competence. Mrs. Smith didn't ask Jamie what he struggled with. She asked what he was good at. That reframe is everything. What do you know? What do you love? What could you teach me? These questions tell a child, I believe there is something in you that is worth finding. 3, repair quickly and openly when you mess up, when you're short, when you snap, when you misread a situation, when you're being unfair or they feel you're being unfair. Say so out loud in front of them, in front of others. Oh, I got that wrong. I'm sorry. I messed up here. This is one of the biggest deposits you can make for a child because it models accountability. It shows that child that the relationship is more important than me, more important than your ego. 4, protect their story. Don't share what a child has told you in confidence in staff meetings unless safety requires it. Don't let your frustration with a child seep into conversations with other adults in front of them. Children notice they are always listening, and betrayal is a massive withdrawal. 5. Show up consistently. Trust is built in the small moments, the daily hellos, the remembered details. Oh, how's your hamster today? That kind of thing. The follow-up on something they told you last week. How is your granddad? How did he get on at the hospital? Consistency is the language love speaks in institutional settings. It says, you can count on me, I'm not going anywhere. Back to Jamie. It doesn't become a fairy tale overnight. It's not how this works. In October, he's had his worst week in years, a blow up in PE, tears in the corridor, letter home. Mrs. Smith doesn't send him to the head. She sits with him instead, outside the classroom, just the two of them. She doesn't say, why do you always do this? She says, something's going on for you this week. You don't have to tell me what, but I do need you to know that one bad week doesn't change what I know about you. And he tells her, slowly, in fragments. His dad has been calling again. His dad who left, who was unpredictable, who made everything feel unsafe. And when things at home feel unsafe, Jamie's body shows up at school, already in fight and flight, already primed for threat and survival. And the slightest thing can make him flip his lid. She doesn't fix it, she can't, but she names it. That sounds exhausting, carrying all that. And she helps him make a plan, a signal, that if he's coming in on a day when things are bad at home or tricky, he'll put a yellow sticky note on the corner of his desk. Nobody else will know what it means, but she will. And she'll adjust. She'll make those adaptations. And that small thing, that private signal, that language between just the two of them, changes the rest of his year. By springtime, Jamie's attendance is up. His writing, which had been a source of shame, has improved because Mrs. Smith has found a way in. Sports, journalism. She let him write match reports. She let him do history project on the 1966 World Cup. She met him where he was and walked him forward from there. As Year 6 Leavers Assembly, he gave a short speech. It doesn't mention his grades. It doesn't mention tests. He says, I want to thank you, Mrs. Smith, because you're the first teacher who didn't already know who I was before she met me. And the room goes quiet. Let's have a look at the bigger picture here. That line that Jamie said, she didn't already know who I was before she met me. I kept coming back to it because that's the thing, isn't it? Kids who need us most are often the ones who arrive pre-labelled. The file precedes them, the reputation arrives before they do. And so, adults, often exhausted, under-resourced, doing their absolute best to respond to the label rather than the child. And there is a psychological phenomenon called the Pygmalion effect, or the Rosenthal effect, whichever you want to say, named after a landmark 1968 study where researchers told teachers certain students had been identified as intellectual bloomers, likely to show dramatic academic progress, and those students were chosen at random. And yet, by the end of the year, the students their teachers believe showed significant higher IQ gains than the others. The teachers hadn't done anything dramatically different. They had simply expected more. And without realising it, they had communicated that belief in 1,000 tiny ways. What you expect from a child shapes what they become. I often say, children will rise to expectation or they will lower to it. And when we struggle, when we expect disruption, failure, we're just waiting for the next instant, children feel that. And they perform to that expectation. Mrs. Smith chose something different. She chose to be curious. She chose that curiosity over judgment, and she chose to be the adult who hadn't already made up her mind. So, I want to end this episode a little bit differently. I want to speak directly to the teachers, the ones who are listening to this on their commute, between planning, marking, probably feeling like they aren't enough hours and not enough of them to go around. I see you. You are doing one of the most important jobs that exist, and one of the hardest, in a system that doesn't give any support for you to be able to do it well. I know you can't be Mrs. Smith to every child every day. I know you're human and you're tired, and some days you're in survival mode too. But here's what I want to leave you with. You don't have to change your child's whole life by a grand gesture. You just have to refuse to write them off. Just stay curious about who they are, even when, and probably especially when, they're making life really difficult. For you, for the children around them, and maybe probably for themselves too. Because somewhere in your classroom right now, there might be a Jamie. A kid who has been managed and monitored, warned about, whose home life is too big for their small body to carry, who's been told in 100 silent ways that they are too much and not enough all at once. And they are waiting. They might not even know they're waiting, but they are. They're waiting for the adult who asks the right question, who doesn't already know who they are, who makes a deposit when everybody else has been withdrawing, and you could be that person. Not perfectly, not every day, but enough. Enough to matter. That's it for today on the Resilient Kid podcast. If this one has landed for you, I'd love to know. Share it with a teacher in your life. Share it with a parent. Share it with anyone who needs to hear their small moments, those micro moments in a day are never small. They build trust. They put deposits in the emotional bank account. I'm just in the process of writing the teacher's version of my book. And I'm probably 3/4 of the way through. And that's why I stopped and did this particular podcast, because I think it's really important. And I see the work that you teachers and you educators, and when I say teachers today, I mean, it doesn't matter what your role is in school, you are an educator. And so I see the very hard work that you do. And I see that sometimes there's nobody at your back supporting you. So just know that I see you, I hear the stories, and I am here to have a hand at your back and support you through it. If you would like to go on the wait list for the teacher's book on how to build resilience in your classroom, then hit reply. If you have seen the link on the newsletter, drop me a message either on the socials or at ashley@theresilientkid.co.uk, and that's Ashley, ASHLEY, and we will put you on the wait list for the teacher's book. So take care and speak to you soon. Lots of love from me to you.